Alright, here we go. We are getting ready for the CISCO2 routing and switching PracApp final. We're going to go over Mr. Sharif's example first, and then we'll do our own. This will be a topology video. So we went over in class, essentially you've got three main parts. We've got over here, we've got our inter VLAN, our ether channels. If you recall correctly, we came into here and we set up DHCP pools. So essentially you're going to have your pool side. We'll call it pool side. Then you're going to have your middleman routers, which is right here. You see we have these two routers. We have default routes going one way, static routes going another way. We also have serial port connections here as well. And then we have our final side, which is over here, and we're going to call that our good guy, bad guy side. All right. So if we break it down a little further and focus just on this one side, what we've got is a multi-layer switch, which you're all familiar with. We do our multi-layer switches with our extra power supply in there, all that, starting it up. It's connected to a regular switch. Now, we also have a secondary switch here. I don't know if he's going to have us connect anything to it, but the point of this switch is to create a second ether channel. So you notice we have two connections here, and we have two connections here, and those are representing our ether channels. Now, as he said in the past, if you know how to do it once, you know how to do it 4 times. So more than likely, we're not going to have to do more than just the two ether channels, right? Essentially making those two lines two physical ports into one logical port. The reason we have this switch is so that we can connect these, which represent the 3 different LANs that he gave us. So you see we have VLAN 10, 20, 30, and they also have their own IP addresses. One thing he may or may not give us is which ports they need to be connected to. So if you notice here, this is connected to 4 on the regular switch, 8, and then 16. So when we go over this, we'll take what he's given us and add our own ports in there. I don't know if he's going to tell us which ports or not, but essentially these represent the LANs, and they have to be in the correct port. Here's our basic switch attached to our MLS with our ether channel. This switch doesn't have anything. Now, technically, we want to be able to test that it's working. So in a real-world scenario, i.e. the test, we would probably go ahead and put end devices right here, and we do the same thing. We'd connect them to the appropriate ports, which we're going to go over when we go over it. Now, the gigabit ports are already taken because that's part of the ether channel. So in reality, we would probably, connect here, connect to, let's see, we connected to 1, we're going to connect to 8, and then we'll connect to 16. But again, we're going to determine that when we set up all of our ports for the VLANs. And then, as you can see here, we've got this server. DHCP is on this server. See the service? You have the default pool here, and then you also have 2 additional pools that we created for VLAN 20 and VLAN 30, and it is providing IP addresses to the devices based off of which VLAN they're connected to. So if our ports are correct, when we come to this computer, go to desktop, go to IP config, click DHCP, this one should give us an IP address in the .10. As you can see here, that's what it's supposed to get, .10. If we come here and do this one, if it's in the right ports, it should get a .20, which it does. There we go. And again, we'll check again with our third one here. IP config, this should be a .30. There we go. So those are all connected, those are all working. So that's why we have this secondary switch here. It's not just so that we can do 2 ether channels, but you also are going to want to put end devices on here to show him that it is functioning and can be tested. So then we've got our DHCP server, again, set up with 3 pools doing all our hard work. for the DHCP. So the big thing on this section again is we created ether channels between the two basic switches and the MLS switch, and then we created 3 VLANs on that. We created a server to handle those VLANs, which is where the IP helper address comes in. As you can see here, we have the IP helper address written down right here, and we are rocking and rolling. This is the poolside topology. Now, from our MLS switch, we're going to move to the middleman routers. Now, these middleman routers are going to be our kind of our backup setup. That's why we're going to be setting up routes for them to help the traffic go. One of these is going to be set up to be the backup, which when we pull all the code out from this router, we'll see that. And you'll have a let's assume that it's going to use the router 1 for main traffic. Something goes down, router 2 will pick up in its stead. We've got these two connected to port 23 and port 24 on the multi-layer switch, so at the bottom. So it's not a part of the ether channel. So essentially you're going to put MLS down, 2 routers, connect them with the Ethernet cable to the gigabit ports. And then on this side, we've got serial cable. So I'm assuming he's going to make us do that to show that we know how to do it. He may not, though. You may be able to just connect that with a regular cable. There's no significance there other than just saying that we know how to do it. On here, you can see we've got these arrows he's created, and those are signifying the default routes and static routes. So you notice we have an S right here. That stands for static route going from right to left. And over here, we've got these arrows, which are signifying a default route going from left to right. So 2 routers in the middle are middleman routers. They've got their own Ethernet. They're part of this network ID. And then you can see here, they've got their own network ID as well for these serial ports. So we've got our pool side, we've got our middleman routers, and we've got our final side, which is our good guy, bad guy side. So this was one of the last prac app we did where we had stateful, stateless, Slack. The new addition is going to be this DHCP snooping with the port fast and BPDU guard. So notice he's named this one good DHCP and this one bad DHCP. So we're going to have to make sure that these computers are getting the correct IP address. This is to prevent someone who's trying to hack into your system and give someone the wrong IP address. So that will be set up with ways to test it. So as you can see here, he's just added these. If we go to desktop IP config, you can see that it's already set up for DHCP. I don't believe it's going to matter how many we put unless he gives us multiple networks, so then you know you need multiple computers there to test, right? So this one's getting 172.16.2.3. Let's check this server real quick. This one's giving out 172.16.2. Right, so that's a bad. If we see 117.16.2, that's the bad IP address. So if we go back and check this guy, he's getting the bad one. He's getting the bad one. Let's see if we can fix that. See, now he's getting the good one. So what's happening is this is already on, and it's getting the bad one. So now it's getting the good one. So that's going to be one thing you're going to have to check, is to make sure that you're getting the correct DHCP. See, I got the bad one there. I don't want the bad one. I want the good one. So we're going to have to make sure this is set up correctly, because you see how that one's getting the wrong one. So that's all stuff we're going to have to set up. And then we have Slack in between our router and our switch. And we have stateful over here for this switch. Again, what we're going to want is end devices to be able to prove everything. So we're probably going to do something like this. And we're going to go ahead and connect our end devices here, and we'll speed things up a little bit. Now if we come here and we click on this and we go to desktop IP config DHCP, are we going to get anything? No, so we still got to set it up. But that's it for our topology. Let's go ahead and build it from scratch real quick. And I will do that right meow. Okay, let's close all these out. Don't need you. All right, so we're going to start out with MLS probably. We'll do our pool side first. So come down here to Network Devices, click on Switches, grab a 3650, place it right here. Then I'm going to take two 2960s, place one here and here. Then we're going to come to End Devices. We're going to place three PCs because we've got three VLANs for these switches. Then we're also going to click on Server and place a server here. So this is all we need for our pool side. So let's go ahead and write down pool side so that we keep that nomenclature the same. Pool side. Okay. Now, all of these are going to be connected with regular copper straight through cables. So we're going to start with switch 0, which for us, we're going to go ahead and call it switch. Let's go ahead and name these. We'll call this switch 1. We'll call this switch 2. We'll call this MLS 1 because there's only going to be one. That's 2. And we'll call this DHCP pool. Okay. Don't need to name the PCs. They're irrelevant. Because once again, I'm going to hold control. Click on that. We're going to go ahead and put switch 1 connected to 2 ports. So I'm going to connect the port 1 and 2 on the MLS to port 1 and 2 respectively on switch 1. So I'm using gigabit to gigabit. Same thing with switch 2. We're going to use 3 and 4 on the MLS to connect to 1 and 2 on the gigabit. Now, if you remember on our next section, our middleman section, we used 24 and 25, 24 and 23, which are our last two gigabit spots on the MLS. We're going to connect the DHCP pool server to 22 since we know we're going to have that. Does it matter? No, I can put the server on 24 and then use 22 and 23. It does not matter. But for the sake of repeating what was done here, we're going to connect it to 22. And now that's not the best case scenario. Obviously, we want gigabit to gigabit, but that's what's going to work for now. So this is our pool side. We're going to go ahead and connect. We know, per what he told us, VLAN 10 is going to be ports what? FA 1 through 10. VLAN 20 is going to be ports FA 11 to 15, and then VLAN 30 will be ports FA 16 to 20. Okay, so now that I know that information, which if he doesn't give us, which I'm assuming he will, if he doesn't give us, you just do what you want, but be consistent. You have to be consistent. Okay, so we're going to know, I know that I can connect, this is going to be VLAN 1, VLAN 10, so I know I need to connect it between 1 and 10. We're going to connect it to 1. This is part of VLAN, let's go ahead and write it down. VLAN 10, this will be VLAN 20, and then this will be VLAN 30. And we'll do the same thing down here. This is VLAN 10. This is VLAN 20. That's not correct. I haven't had enough caffeine yet, guys. Sorry. VLAN 30. Okay. Come back here, hold control, click on our cable. So VLAN 20 means I need to go between 11 and 15. I always remember to just do the first port because that's just easier to remember. First port in the section is 11, so I'm going to connect it to 11. VLAN 30 is 16 to 20, so when I come to the switch, I'm going to connect it to 16. That's just easier to remember. We'll do the exact same thing on this side. Connect it to 1, connect it to 11, and then connect it to 16. And that's it. Pool side is now set up. We haven't gone in and done all the work, but this is just topology. So we're going to move on to middleman now. So middleman routers. Okay, so I'm going to come down here to network devices. I'm going to click on 2911. I'm going to hold control. I'm going to place one here and one here. Now, I know he wants serial on that side, so before we begin, we're going to go to this router, turn it off, drag this into the first spot so they're all zeros. Again, remember, depending on where I put this affects what number it has. If you see here, this is 3, 2, 1. I know it's really hard to see, and 0. So when I put it here, then my serial number is going to be S0/0/ whatever. Right. So now that I've done that, I can turn this back on, and we'll go ahead and make it bigger so we can see. And let's go ahead and click on router 2. Do the same thing. I'm going to turn it off. Drag this over to the first spot. Turn it back on. And while we're here, let's go ahead. Okay, well, never mind. I'll do what I want. We're going to call this MMR2, so middleman router 2. And we'll call this one MMR1, middleman router 1. Now, while we're waiting on it to boot, we know that we're going to be connecting this with regular Ethernet cable. So we've reserved spot 23 and 24 in our minds for it. We're going to connect it to 0 just because that's easier. Why not? It's the first one. Now, we know we're going to have something else over here, and that's where our serial ports are going to be connected. So we know it's going to be another router, so let's go ahead and throw that over there. And this is the beginning of good guy, bad guy. Okay, but this way we can come down here to our lightning bolt. We're going to click on the serial DCE, so the clock. Now, I like to do it where I have the clocks on the same router, so I don't have to remember to do it on 2. I only have to do it on 1. So that means I'm going to come here and click this router first, and then connect to this one. Now, what did I not do? I did not do what I did with the other 2, which is turn it off, drag this over, turn it on, and then that's done. We're going to call, I believe he called this ISP 1 or ISP in the example. We're just going to call it ISP 1 for now. But we're going to go ahead and go back to our serial DCE cable, click on this first, and we'll do serial 0 to 1, and then we'll do serial 1, serial 0. Now that's connected. That's our middleman routers. That's all we're going to have to do. And again, this is to put some redundancy in there. If you remember, in the last prac app, we had 1 at the top and then 2 below, and then another switch. That's essentially what we have, but we have it sideways now. Okay, so that's it for middleman routers. Middleman routers is pretty easy. This is going to be good guy, bad guy, and we're going to need to set up slack and stateful. So that means we're going to need 2 more switches. So we'll come back down here, network devices, click on switches. We're going to use regular 2960 switches. So we're going to put 1 here and 1 there. And then we need some end devices, and for that we're going to need end device, and we're going to need 2 servers, so we're going to put those down. And while we're here, we're going to go ahead and name this bad DHCP. Remember, good guy, bad guy, and good DHCP. We're going to call this switch. What are we going to call this one? Switch. Let's call it switch 11, just for the hell of it. And then we'll call this switch 22. All right, they all have names now. We're going to come down here to our lightning bolt, click on it. We don't need any other regular connections, just a standard old Ethernet cable. We're going to connect this to gigabit here, connect this to gigabit there. Now, in his example, he has them just connected to regular FA ports. I don't think it matters. So, as long as you know which port you have them connected to. What's going to matter is you know which port that the good one is connected to. Everything else isn't going to matter, right? So, for now, we're going to connect those all higgledy-piggledy. And, again, we're just going to connect... That's what it was. That's why we didn't connect. We didn't want to use the gigabit because we need the gigabit for that router. There's always a reason for things Mr. Sharif does, right? Okay, so as I'm correcting myself, ISP, we're going to be gigabit connected to this switch. So that's why we're not using the gigabits. Same thing here. We're going to be connected to this switch with gigabit. And then these regular old Joe Schmoes are going to be connected to regular fast ports. All right, and same thing here. Connect those end devices, and that's it. So that's it. That's all we're going to have to do. We've got poolside, we've got middleman routers, and we got good guy, bad guy. Okay? So that's our topology, and I'll be back with some more in a minute. This is a lot, I know. Bye.